we'll go ahead and call the Environmental Action Committee of November 16th to order. We want to go around the room with a round of introductions. My name's Alan Long, Alderman, Ward 4, Position 2.
Josh Crittenden, Citizen at Large.
Andrew Miles, Citizen at Large.
Peter Niergarten, Fayetteville Sustainability Director and Staff Liaison to the Environmental Action Committee.
Kyle Smith, Citizen at Large.
Mike Emery, Citizen at Large.
Aubrey Shepard, Citizen at Large.
Richard Russell, Citizen at Large.
Sounds like we're all
Good
one.
cool title, Peter.
Where's all the...
And how about asking the
Yes,
public?
Sure. Lee Folson, I'm a planner in the Sustainability and Resilience Department here in the city of Fayetteville.
I'm Matt Pope. I handle environmental compliance for Walmart and Sam's Club. I'm just going to say that.
Great.
Ryan Mills, just an interested citizen.
Great. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you coming. All right. So the first thing on the agenda, approval of the meeting agenda. Anybody have anything on the agenda they'd like to talk about first? I would like to add at the end of the agenda, just briefly, just to talk about kind of our purpose and moving forward, where we want to go with the Environmental Action Committee. Everybody be okay with that? Okay. All right, so let's start with our old business. And Aubrey, I believe this is yours, discussion of the importance of building on Fayetteville's status as a certified wildlife habitat community.
Well, we talked about that some last month, and I didn't prepare anything extra to say or show tonight, but we did talk about it a little bit last week, that we want to try to recruit more people and businesses, individual homes, even any kind of housing development that has a little green space around it, to set aside portions as part of the continuing, of the sustainable environment of Fayetteville, the National Wildlife Federation Community Habitat Program. And that's something that this committee has been charged with doing, and did it quite well the first year or two to get it started. But we need to participate in that more. And as I said briefly last time, it's important to get everybody who has any kind of start on a natural yard, anybody that's got some decent native trees and would like to have more native wildflowers growing in their yard, to attract the butterflies. In the case of monarchs, we need more species of milkweed, and Peter sent everybody an article from the paper, I believe, this morning, and a statement by a national group that Lionel's part of, mayors that agreed to create more habitat for monarchs in particular in their cities. And of course, the way that we do that is to get people to set aside land that's not being used for agriculture, and in many cases, big tracts of land that belong to factories. And the one in my neighborhood that we got involved in that is Pinnacle Foods, Wet Prairie, and they just mowed it. I've tried to get more people to go out all summer long, all growing season, but they mowed it in the very first Monday of November, because last year and the year before, I was trying to keep them into winter, and so they didn't mow in the winter. And the way you protect native plants and encourage the native plants whose seed and root structures still exist in the ground after years of being used as just places to mow around property. You know, you see big factories and they've got these big areas. And many of those reasons, they may want to expand the factory someday, or whatever the storage facility, or all sorts of different kinds of industrial things. But they're not going to do it soon. In the meantime, they can save a lot of money by mowing it once in the winter. If it's really flat, it's not extremely wet, like Pinnacle Prairie has a lot of sinkholes and that sort of thing. So it's very difficult to mow it during a rainy season. But some of these places have their choice of times to mow in winter. And that way, during the growing season, we'd find out each year more and more plants would come up. This was a process that actually was not expected when Woolsey Wet Prairie was set aside at the West Side treatment plant several years ago. But it's turned out that it's worked very well there, as it has on some other places that we were familiar with before that, that they didn't buy seed. They had money set aside to buy seed for native plants. But there was no reason to do it. They found out that those old cow pastures and hay fields had the beginnings underground, just waiting to get their time in the air. So I also have a hope to get a second notification from the mayor's office to Pinnacle Prairie for continuing to do this these 4 or 5 years that they've participated fully. And hope that if each of us can make a commitment to try to talk with somebody you know that has a business or a private home, or hopefully several of them, then you can get more habitat set aside for native plants where native insects can be harbored and prosper. In the case of the milkweed plant, is the host plant for monarch butterflies and a few other species. I think last month I showed you a picture of a caterpillar of a milkweed moth species. Its caterpillar was beautiful. And so the plan would be that we do get some more things printed up to show this program, advocate for this program, and that everyone have them. And we put, actually, for these several years, I've had one of our stickers from the past. I had to replace it only one time over at least 4 or 5 years. One of those things in the post office, on their little board, you notice they have a little pegboard, and every month or two I'll come along and turn it over because it's got different information on this side. Stick a pen back in there. But depending on where you work and what you're involved with, there may be many places you can share those things out on tables where information are. But it really takes talking to executives at some of these plants to get the big ones. And you don't know, when you go to a house, a neighbor's house, and talk to them, it may be you may have noticed a neighbor who does a lot of mowing, or maybe even the wife does a lot of mowing, and you often wonder why. The grass is only this tall when they do it. The city does that all over the place. And the thing that Peter sent out today, information to all of us, included some of those things. And not mowing during growing season is the key factor. So if you can convince people, point out how much money do you spend mowing, how much time do you spend? Have you ever hurt your toe or nearly got heat stroke doing it? Did you really want to do it then? If you set it aside and you've got minimal, in fact, not deadheading your flowers is an important thing as well. Because birds are using those tall stems with the seed heads all winter. And even if they're knocked down, you'll find birds scratching in there. And not getting rid of your leaves. Let there be a mat of leaves in any part of your yard that you don't have some good reason to remove it. Because wonderful insects of many species may be in that leaf litter. I'm talking about the important good insects, the beneficial insects. So just less fighting with nature and more getting along with it and learning to enjoy it and appreciate it and try to reduce the number of species that are actually wiped out on this earth. We can't do much about the rainforest. We can send money to somebody that's trying, but here at home we can make habitat available to more species, and by doing somewhat less expensive and troublesome activities. Any question further that we should mention?
Well, I think one thing I picked up on, Aubrey, is that you'd like the city maybe to have more promotional materials printed.
Yes, there is. The model one that we had was fine. The member who provided those actually had an office with the city for a while doing that to get that started. Terry Lane may have that available in her computer still, and possibly we could have it updated with some more things. And I could get my wife to help prepare something similar. And I'm not good with photoshopping, putting together brochures and that sort of thing, but she is. And if we get enough of those and we just, you know, if you get a stack each meeting and you give out a few every month and talk to a few people, we can make an impact ourselves. But another thing that's in the information package you sent out is the trying to get more public land put into that category. And I've seen there's one field in southeast Fayetteville that had several species of milkweed on it several years ago, but they kept making, well, I don't think they made hay on it every year. They just come mow it sometime, a couple times in the summer, 3 times in the growing season. And now I didn't see, but only the ones next to the pond on that land, the swamp milkweed plants are growing there, and some other wildflowers, but the wildflower cover, the native plants are suppressed so much that it might take 2 years before it got back to this glowing native grass and native wildflower status if we get somebody to do that. But public land that's not being used, just like corporate land that's not being used, is a prime place for this kind of effort.
Aubrey, do you have like a list of prime targets that you'd like to see in that category? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're going to say
We
any,
got the invasive list
Yeah.
in hand.
but I know you're going to say any big field we see around, but are there some that you specifically know are being misused that their owners could be contacted and educated, or businesses that should be high on the priority list of places to talk to about getting buy-in for something like this?
Well, I could certainly make a list in the coming weeks to do that. And it doesn't have to be one of the really big ones. It can be a small business, and they're paying to have it landscaped. And it's all non-native stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the city has, liked that in the past, because they would be a bunch of pretty flowers in the spring that aren't native are good when we have the inspectors come in for the, America in Bloom?
Beautiful.
America in Bloom.
That one.
thing, yeah. And we get honored each year because but mainly it's for the non-native species that are blooming early. Because the natives, except the things that are woodland, the native plants in the woods bloom early before the sun stops hitting the ground. So that's why so many of these things that you go out in the woods and find will be in bloom, and then you don't see them in the summertime. There are a few that survive in dim light. But anyway, by just encouraging the use of native plants for all the landscaping that anybody chooses to do, we just like say, we can't enforce no possession of invasives in the city. That sounds pretty difficult, and it takes education, so it's a voluntary thing. But if we encourage it and get more people signed up, they have a sign in their yard, and they can explain why they're not mowing the way their neighbors are. We've got native plants, we've got native grass species that are coming up, and they have to grow in the growing season. They don't come out in the winter like fescue and things that people have brought in for cattle. Let me shut up and see what else. But yes, we can prepare, and everybody else look at places you see and say, hey, there's one church in particular out on Weddington, some of you've seen. They started about 4 or 5 years ago. And one day they had just started putting in garden there, and I went by and took pictures and said, hey, put in more native plants, and this is all prairie. And it's turned out they've got prairie sign out there in front of their church on Weddington. It's popular. So it's easy to do, but it does take that personal contact with somebody in power and with interest and understanding.
You might have already addressed this because I came in late. I apologize. But like a business or a residence, either one, if they try to let their yard or property go more native, is that going to be a code violation? Like, do we have a 6-inch, grass rule or something?
I think it's 8-inch, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know.
So just a couple things on that item. It's an excellent point. The city has a certified natural landscape ordinance that you can get your yard certified through that will allow you to, have grass that's taller. You have to meet a couple different criteria, predominantly just to ensure that folks are not using that certification just to be lazy.
Right.
Because folks just, allowing a messy yard out of apathy for actually wanting to take care of it. But for folks who truly do want to create habitat in their yards and have that certified through our ordinance, we have a process for that.
Okay.
In terms of the certified natural habitat program that the National Wildlife Foundation operates, they have a really friendly website that has a couple of different steps for getting your yard certified under their program,
Right.
and getting the sign,
Yeah,
providing
that is
food,
nice.
water, cover, and places for habitat to raise their young. And so that's the tool I think you would want to point any homeowner or property owner in the community to that wants to participate in their program and become certified under that program. So
And those two things go like this together. It's, the code enforcement's not required to even alert people. If they see tall grass, they will maybe do it. Particularly, it's supposed to be if a neighbor complains, but in some neighborhoods have been target areas in Fayetteville where they would go and actually spot them.
And the ordinance is not actually drafted as something where it's supposed to be where someone complains. It's just that the way the Fayetteville City staff is set up, the budget doesn't allow for code enforcement officers to drive around all the time looking for it. So that's what it's turned into, is a complaint-driven process.
But it would be a nice thing if they had brochures that we were talking about and share that as to give them a start if that's what they're trying to do. Because I do know people like that, and they've been intimidated by, afraid somebody will complain. They don't even know.
And you have to remember too that homeowners associations, POAs, if they have rules, you can have the city's certified natural yard, but still have to keep your yard at a certain height. And there's a lot of those in Fayetteville, a lot in farther east Fayetteville, but POA and HOA rules are always more restrictive than city ordinances
But
generally.
if anybody lives in one of those, it would be another place to bring up the subject and suggest this. And there would be a certain number of people in the POA who would want to have a habitat yard. And so I think, I think it's winnable at some period, but always you'll have POAs or, basically almost gated communities in our city. We theoretically don't have actual gated communities in Fayetteville, I believe.
We can. We don't currently have any, but there is an avenue for that. Yeah, and I think even in an HOA or a POA, people could still have part of their yard as a natural area. Usually, the complaints that I receive and have to forward on are have nothing to do with people's backyards or side yards or anything like that. It's what you see when you drive by the street.
Mm-hmm.
Neighbors tend to not be so okay with. But I think that's a great idea to bring it up at HOAs, POAs. You mentioned a list of public lands. Did you want to bring a list of potential ideas
Yeah,
for the next meeting?
we've got, there's some places that they've almost sold that are city land. And they've been used for various things. I know one's been a horse area for a lady who's kept several horses there, and she had a deal with the city to use it for years. And then they were about to sell it, and then the buyers backed out on that. And so all those parts of that could be managed for, and that's just one. Over in the district where we now have land that the city can sell to industries. Until it's sold and something's started on it, it could be habitat. It doesn't have to be allowed to grow up in non-native things and become somewhat inappropriate. It can be managed a bit for the goal to healthy habitat. And I think we could actually get a list of those someplace from what's in that area.
I can think of a number of those pieces of property you're thinking about. Another area to think about maybe school property. Fayetteville Public Schools, they may have some areas that, they could, not the entire area, obviously. Kids have to play somewhere, but they could teach children on, how to create these natural habitats, and that could be a good learning experience and way to disseminate the information.
Yeah, and that's been going on for several
Yeah,
years.
we talked a little bit about that, maybe at one of the previous meetings where Butterfield Elementary tried a no-mow zone. Dana Smith, who used to be on this committee, and I teamed up, but we haven't, we didn't really manage it. We just quit mowing, got with the district maintenance and quit mowing, and we didn't really know what to expect, but we didn't seed it, or we didn't burn it off, we didn't do anything, so it's a pretty weedy spot right now, and there's some wildflowers. I don't know if they're native or not. I don't know what they are, but we learned from it. I think we need to go in and manage it a little bit, and Aubrey and I have talked a little bit about we probably ought to mow it this time of year, and then try to do something to encourage, maybe do some seeding and stuff to try to encourage the right stuff to come back in the spring. But anyway, yeah, there are opportunities at other schools. The stormwater swales, or retention pond areas, things like that, at schools or at other properties, conceivably. And then, like I said, some of the schools have some pretty big acreage that's not really utilized. Butterfield has other acreage that we kind of talked about someday maybe trying to, it borders some woods.
Right.
There might be, a big swath we could turn into a no-mow zone and try to get some more stuff growing. And other schools too, I know. It's like Vandergrift McNair's got 40 acres of woods and they're putting in mountain bike trails. So there's other acreage out there the school system owns.
I was just thinking of Holcomb Elementary would be a great spot due to the riparian zone that runs through that area. It'd be a great area to see children, getting involved in something like that, because it could also be an education into the riparian zone buffer.
Mhm.
So just something to think about. I could probably talk with Dana, or you could. I talk to Dana pretty often on school issues.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you talk to her often?
Oh, yeah, hit and miss, but you may talk to her more, I'm not sure. But yeah, that would be a good thing for us to visit with her about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something you feel like reaching out to
Yeah.
Dana about?
Yeah.
I'll definitely follow up with her as well, but if you want to reach out, that'd be great.
Yeah.
One of the problems with these spaces that are left open, whether they're for sale, it's not being used fully because the factory doesn't need it all, or like Pinnacle Food, one of the things that happens at any kind of food production plant is you have freezers. And what is that deadly substance that makes the freezer work?
Ammonia?
Freeze?
Freon?
No, Freon.
Ammonia?
Ammonia. And when there's an ammonia leak, as there have been at all of them I know of here in Springdale, we used to have them periodically when I worked at the Warning News office up there at a Tyson plant. People would break in. Pinnacle Food has theirs better protected now from escaping outdoors. People would drive up in the night and break up the system and leave it leaking, fill up their container with that stuff to make methamphetamine or whatever, and haul it away, and the whole neighborhood would be downstream in the wind. You'd have to leave your building and go somewhere else. I remember they were evacuating a nursing home because it was near that one, and it was, half a mile away or something, but it was drifting right down.
They've
there.
improved on that a lot because there's a lot of security rules and stuff around that now, and process safety management and things, and so, yeah, that doesn't happen very often anymore.
So there are always those chances for an explosion or a leak of some kind of substance at a big plant. So there is a need to keep homes from being built next to them. There's a reason not to expose the public too heavily in a place with that kind of, but we want those industries. We want our groceries, and we want everything else.
All right, well, it looks like we have some good ideas on that, and we can revisit that at the next meeting. Maybe talk about a little bit about the schools. I'll try to get an update, Aubrey, on the possibility of having some promotional stuff done. If maybe you could send me some information as to what you would like on that.
Okay, have you seen the old one?
I have.
You have them, yeah.
But
Well, we could add,
yeah, that could be played with. I just need to see, where that would be printed and if there's, how that works exactly. Getting the city to do that. Peter, you might know.
I'm not sure if I've seen that or not. I'm wondering if there's some examples on the National Wildlife Foundation's website, though, that might be able to be used.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to add is that when Terry Lane was a member of the Environmental Action Committee, she acted as the sort of the community's liaison for the Certified Habitat recognition and program. When the city became certified in 2012, when she left the Environmental Action Committee, Dana Smith, I believe, served in that role for a brief period. When Dana left, that role really has kind of fallen by the wayside and been unfilled. So the administration would look to this group, as an advisory group, in trying to help identify an individual who could fill that role and help provide that sort of cheerleading and advocacy for this particular program as an initiative of the city of Fayetteville. So if anybody's interested in kind of stepping up and providing that role, I think it would be something you could visit with Terry about. She certainly has a lot of the history and a lot of the knowledge on the program. And,
I'll talk to Terry and Dana both about it just to find out a little more about what gaps we have and what we would need to do.
I think there's some criteria that we're theoretically supposed to be meeting, certain numbers of events and properties certified every year. I don't exactly know what those thresholds are, but that'd be good information to get from them and know about.
Well, why don't we, at the next meeting, if everybody wants to think about that, I know, well, you said you were going to talk to Dana about that. Was that something that you were interested in doing?
Well, maybe. I tend to overcommit to, stuff, but yeah, I'm interested in seeing that move forward. So maybe let me talk to Terry and Dana and get a feel for it first.
Well, and everybody else give it some thought too, and we can talk about that at the next meeting.
Yeah.
It'd be a good agenda item. Keep this discussion going and hopefully move forward.
I'll try to get a summary of, what we need, what we should be doing as a city, and
That would be helpful.
yeah, I'll put that together.
All right. And Lee, I believe you were next on the agenda to talk about the Arkansas statewide monarch conservation strategy and the report on that.
Just as an intro before Leaf talks, I think this is topic is very much related to the Community Wildlife Habitat Program. It's also an initiative of the National Wildlife Foundation. We got wind of this statewide meeting on monarch habitat about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Administration was interested in having a representative attend this statewide meeting down in Conway last week, and we sent Leaf down there to find out what was kind of going on and what the lay of the land is, and he's here to bring you guys some information on what he learned down there.
Sure, thank you, Peter. So in the packet that Peter sent out this morning, there was an article out of the Democrat Gazette that was today, I think, wasn't
this
it?
morning.
There was a reporter there. And so if you read that article, you kind of got a little bit of a background, but the Arkansas, I believe it was the Arkansas Wildlife Foundation or Federation kind of put this together. It was the first annual Arkansas Monarch Strategy meeting. And they just kind of brainstormed to think of every group, individuals, agencies that would be interested in putting together a strategy for monarch butterfly habitat in the state of Arkansas. So there were people there from the Arkansas Master Gardeners Group, from the Arkansas Electric Co-op, the Farm Bureau, the Forestry Association, the Arkansas Game and Fish, the Highway and Transportation Department, Natural Heritage Commission, the State Plant Board, the Arkansas Wildlife Federation, City of Fayetteville, City of Little Rock, National Wild Turkey Federation, Northwest Arkansas Land Trust, just a lot of people with a lot of broad background, mostly in wildlife and conservation efforts. But the group really was there because the monarch butterfly, as you read in that paper or in this pledge, the North American monarch population has declined by more than 90% in the past 2 decades. And that's attributable to decline in the degradation of the loss of their summer breeding habitat in the United States and the loss of their winter habitat in Mexico.
Did you say 90, I'm sorry to interrupt, 95%?
90% in the last 2
90%.
decades.
Okay.
And so how they measure that, where they winter in Mexico is a very specific place. It's east of Mexico City. It's in the mountains. And the monarchs will actually cover acres of ground. And so they do a flyover and they measure that, and then they determine how many millions of butterflies were there. So in this packet that you got, actually, there's a graph in this section on the native milkweeds where it shows their range. in the Midwest. And then this page shows the numbers over time, and so this is last year, right here. And so there's a big push from the National Wildlife Federation to create habitat because they don't want to see the monarch butterfly go on the endangered species list. The monarch butterfly has a very interesting life cycle. They actually go through 4 generations before the final generation that actually emerges in the upper Midwest flies all the way back to Mexico. The first 3 generations live about a month, and so Arkansas is in that flyway for both their spread in the spring and summer as they go north, and then their migration from the north back to Mexico, because they'll fly all the way back to Mexico from Minnesota and Wisconsin, Illinois, the upper Midwest. And that 4th generation will live 10 months, and so a lot of the national strategy is in habitat restoration in the upper Midwest, and a lot of that habitat has been removed due to farming practices and the use of glyphosate, Roundup, in weed control. So, you know, the days of the small-time farmer with 160 acres all enclosed by a fence where weeds grow up along their fence row, those days have kind of gone away with modern monoculture in agriculture, and they've taken out the fence rows so they can grow corn right to the very edge of the property. And so a lot of the money that's being spent is going to be spent in the upper Midwest on habitat restoration. But because we're a flyover state, we're very important to those first generation of butterflies. And so the milkweed that grows in Arkansas is very important for that. And we're also very important for the nectar plants that then feed those monarchs as they fly back south towards their winter habitats. And so this meeting was all about getting people in the room that had public lands or private lands. And so we had people there from the gas pipelines and from the electrical co-ops, because you got a lot of right-of-way. You got a lot of highway department right-of-way. You got a lot of opportunity on utility lands and then public lands. And then there's a whole nother push, which is a municipal push, and that's because cities and towns have a lot of public land in parks and open spaces that could be used in school districts that could be used to create monarch butterfly habitat, both growing the milkweed and then growing the nectar producing plants that are also needed for all pollinators. The monarch butterfly is kind of the canary in the coal mine. It's a very, everybody can get behind the monarch butterfly. They're very well loved, but really it's a problem of all pollinators. We've destroyed so much nectar producing plant life that everything that pollinates is really at risk. And so the National Wildlife Federation came up with a Mayor's Monarch Pledge, which is what I'm here to talk to you guys specifically about tonight. And this pledge asks that the mayors commit to implementing some of the actions that are in the 25 actions in the pledge. And it would be something that we as a city could go online and visit the website and take the pledge and then start developing a program or internal policy with our Parks Department, with the Sustainability Department, to work towards completing some of these action items. And so the action items are, start with issuing a proclamation to raise awareness about the decline of the monarch butterfly. And then they go all the way towards, converting lots or planting milkweed or working with the school district to create habitat, community gardens, talking about invasive species removal, which is something that we've talked about recently at the city, that we've worked on a project. Changing the mowing practices, things that the city can do as we manage our public lands to help create more habitat for the monarchs. And so I thought this packet was really good. We talk about community wildlife habitats, this is something that goes right hand in hand what you were talking about earlier, Aubrey, with community wildlife habitats. That really works really good for creating monarch habitat too. And so anyway, I thought, well, Peter and I talked about bringing this forward to you all and see what you all think about that. I don't know, Peter, if you have anything that you'd like to add to that.
I think, yeah, Leaf gave an excellent overview of the program. It looks like, a really good opportunity for Fayetteville to provide leadership in this area across the state. There are, about 24 communities across the country that have signed on with the Mayor's Monarch Pledge. Lead cities are Mayor of Austin, Texas, and the Mayor of St. Louis, Missouri. Interestingly, there's several small communities in Texas as well that are signed on, as well as
Well, Austin's losing all their bats.
Yeah.
They want to get those back.
yeah, a couple communities in Florida, Missouri, North Carolina, Utah, Connecticut, and elsewhere. But I think it would, a good step, if this is something that you all are interested in promoting and supporting, would be a request to the administration and city council that Fayetteville sign on to the Mayor's Monarch Pledge, or a recommendation from this body that Fayetteville sign on to the Mayor's Monarch Pledge, and then after that, works to develop a community monarch habitat program, whether it's essentially working from the list that's in the Monarch Pledge in developing a program, whether it's seed giveaways or development of gardens that include milkweed or other pollinating plant foods. But that was our thought in bringing this to you all. If it's something that you're interested in promoting and supporting, and that is that you all would want to take some sort of formal action on this item.
Well, I would move that we support this and forward it how it needs to be. I thought 2 or 3 years ago, Lionel put out a proclamation similar to this.
He did for the community wildlife habitat,
Well, that
which was very similar.
No, I mean, since then. There's one specifically about the monarch that I thought he.
I don't know, we would have to check into that. That could be possible.
I think so.
I think this may be the,
a different organization.
that may have been
Yeah. It's
a
something.
precursor to them actually creating
It
a
is.
formal,
Yeah, so he's been interested in it for years. So it's an excellent document. I read it all today. It's very similar to what I've read before, slightly new.
I've heard
version.
of another outfit that does a Monarch Way Station, where you can, and then they track. I remember 20 years ago or something, my oldest daughter, when we lived in Fort Smith, they went out and counted and actually tagged
Put a little tag.
monarchs. Yeah. And so there's another organization that does that too. That might have been what you're thinking of or something.
No,
But yeah, I'm all for
I don't know
this.
which one it was, but maybe Lionel remembers.
Well, we can definitely check
that.
that.
Certainly ask him, yeah.
But I'm sure he'll be happy to sign that.
It says here that mayors who have taken the Mayor's Monarch Pledge must commit to implement at least 3 of the 25 action items within taking a year. And 1 action item must be from the program and demonstration garden section. So I don't think that this would be a very difficult pledge to take, but I would hope that it would be something that the city would do and try to look at some of the more difficult parts of
Sounds
that
like we could probably
implementing.
check off a few right off the bat. Just
I
have
think
our-
so. I mean, one of
We
the,
actually could.
Yeah.
one of the items is issuing a proclamation.
Yeah.
If
Easiest
the
part.
Environmental Action Committee supports this, and I think you do, we can
Yeah.
vote on that. But I would definitely take a resolution to the city council, if that was something that you'd be interested in, to ask the mayor to do that, to take the pledge.
Fayetteville's always the most forward-thinking city in the state, so, I mean, if we don't do it,
True.
So we've, this year, I think they were a little bit gentler. There's some old man in town who's been fussing every year about putting lights down in the flower beds when the flowers are still in bloom and destroying habitat early. So there were monarch caterpillars on the few milkweed plants that were on the square this year, right to the end. And let's see, yeah, twice I brought 2 different chrysalises and monarchs to the square in the fall here to show kids. And they just, you know, they've been, in some of those schools where they've put in things you're talking about, the teachers do a better job because they've got something to show, and they raise the young. You got to know when one's really getting fat if you want to take him in and raise him in your house, because it's a lot of work to keep going out and getting a new leaf for him to eat every year from a milkweed plant if you don't have a lot of growing in your yard. But I got to release 2 live ones in November, about the very first, and just 4 days ago or something. And so that hatched and flew. And they need 65 degrees is best, but if it's 62 and you're on the sunny side of the hill, they'll get warmed up and fly southwest. So when I have one release, I take them to the southwest slope so that they can hit to Texas and Mexico. But part of this is, you know, wishful thinking in my part, but everybody who mows, everybody who trims around the bushes or works on most of the people that work in the gardens, you know, that are professionals, have been in there for years, they know a lot about this stuff. They know what host plants are, they know but what insects they can identify, the kind of caterpillars on a lot of the plants and so forth. They know they should stay long. But they did last a little longer, and so the men were working, putting in the wires. And so some of the plants got to stay up, even milkweed. And of course, what you may not know, you may know you need to protect that milkweed because it's probably got a caterpillar on it, which some of these did. But it's not necessarily going to lay, it's when the caterpillar gets through eating on the monarch or the milkweed, he goes down and finds another woody stem to hang himself up as a chrysalis on there. So if you take down the bushes around the milkweed plant, it's just there bare. You may not have saved them on it in that case. So it's a touchy thing about timing for protecting those plants. So the square is never going to be the most productive because they're always going to be putting up lights, in late October and first week of November. But yes, they can be flying out of here in November because I had 2 of them do it this year, and I've had it in past years too. But that's the time to take them and get them in so they're in a stable environment for a few days, out of the weather, the first storms that come through. So, but I don't think we have a problem getting Lionel on board. Probably not anybody on the council going to be against that. And so I already moved that we pass it, please. And that we do what we can to educate everybody about some of those details. In particular, go back and talk some more on me. Down here in front of the where the TV station is, and next door there's one of the facilities. It's either part for police cars and for maintenance and stuff of the city buildings. In between, there's a little garden. Now, into sometime in October, there was this vine milkweed. It's not even listed on there. It's one, however, that feeds caterpillars. It's called Sinantium laevi instead of Asclepius something or other. So it was climbing up the little sign in front of that little garden. And it was climbing up as it does every year, and it usually has a caterpillar or two if you get in there and look close. But right at the last minute, somebody came cleaning up, as old farmers say, and cut those vines of all kinds of plants that are in there. Several other natives grow in there, but a lot of it's a mixture. But it's a nice mixture that attracts butterflies and bees and things. So, yeah, if everybody who operates a mower, Dream World, everybody who clips and cleans and does all these things were aware of the beneficial insects that depend on our native plants. If you see a plant that has not got its foliage eaten by the end of the growing season, it's not a native plant. It's just almost sure it's not a native plant because there's a native insect that eats foliage of all kinds of grass and all kinds of species of things that are native. Anyway, second my motion,
So,
Alan.
just to be clear, your motion is to take that to the city council.
Take it to the city council.
For a resolution.
Yes, sir.
And that will be to endorse the mayor to take the
Mhm.
mayor's Monarch Pledge. That would probably require some city council action on some of our ordinances in the city, depending on which of the 25 the mayor chose, so.
Well, it probably doesn't have to start with the hard ones to get passed.
It says at least 3, but I've read the entire list, and, you know, there's quite a few more I think we can do, so.
We don't have to do all of them at once.
No, we can take on more than 3 at one time. They're pretty simple. Some of them we've already done, so I think we've done over 3 of them already.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I'll draft an email to the city attorney and assistant city attorney, and I'll take that to the city council. If it's okay with the committee, I'm gonna probably do that at the last agenda session in December, after the budget's out of the way. Because I'd like the public to actually hear about it, and I don't want it to get buried with the budget. So, in order for education purposes, I think that'd be better. Lee, thank you so
You bet.
much for going to that.
Thank you all for
Yeah, thanks, Lee.
just saying. You bet. Get the first 5 knocked out of mine.
All right, the last thing we have on the agenda is vacancies. We have 2 vacancies.
Actually, we have 3. I
vacancies.
misprinted in the agenda. I apologize for.
And who, I know, Mike, your term, but you've reapplied already.
Yep.
I've
Aubrey,
reapplied, yeah.
and you've reapplied.
I think I
and-
need to.
Was yours the other one? that
I think, yeah, because I had lost track, so I need to reapply then. Did you give us the information I need, or do I need to go hunt that down?
I can.
That'd make it easy.
Did I
for
put
us.
it in the agenda?
I don't know.
Or is it confused? Froze up now.
It's very simple if you just go to the Access Fayetteville.
Okay.
Or Fayetteville-AR.org.
Okay.
No, I got that wrong again.
Fayetteville-gov.
Fayetteville-AR.gov. We've had a couple city websites since I've been on.
I think
the
they all still redirect where you're
They
supposed to
do.
go.
They do. But you can click on there and
Okay.
attach them pretty easily. So please reapply.
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
And those are due.
They are due the 25th,
Yeah.
but
That's the, what, Wednesday before Thanksgiving?
yep,
Yeah.
due the 25th. So. All right.
I will.
Okay, so the last thing I wanted to touch base on real quick was just kind of, for just maybe 5 minutes at the most, kind of talk about what some of us think are our goals for the committee, so we can start planning for some of the things that we want to accomplish in 2016. I'm going to put Richard on the spot. We can go around the table. If you don't have anything, you can just pass it on to the next person, but
One idea I had, I just picked this up, I was at a Town and Gown Advisory Committee earlier this afternoon, is they did a survey of all of their members on what they wanted their goals to be for this year, and we're talking about revisiting that survey for their next year's goals. And so I thought I had is putting out a survey to you all and just to allow you to vote on various topics and see kind of where the group consensus was, if there was any, on a couple of different items. And I was thinking that in terms of guiding the development of that survey is using the city's sustainability assessment that we did last summer, our STAR communities rating, sustainability tools for assessing and rating communities. There's several goals and criteria area in there, energy and environment, in their natural systems areas that I think have good overlap with the mission and charter for the Environmental Action Committee. So using those areas to develop a survey for you all is a thought I have in helping to guide that
I think that's
discussion.
a great idea. If you want to send me kind of what you had thought of sending out, and we can maybe incorporate a couple.
Would you like to
things into
try
it.
and execute a survey between now and the next meeting and potentially discuss the results at the next meeting?
I would like to talk about that in December.
Okay.
For sure. That way we can make sure to set a list of goals and priorities for 2016.
Does that sound reasonable to folks?
I like that idea.
Okay. I think we could probably do either, we might even be able to put that in a, what's the Survey Monkey?
Yeah.
As a potential way of surveying. I'm not going to guarantee we can do that, but we can look at that as a way of.
The city's done it before. I don't know what the cost is on it, but this would be a much
We have
smaller
a
scale, so,
subscription to Survey Monkey, so it's not that difficult to do.
I was going to go around and let everybody kind of just say if they had any general ideas, but now I think that's an excellent place to start. We were going to do a survey before at one point, so this I think will get us kind of going in that direction. Anything you'd like to see incorporated in the survey?
Well, what I was going to do, what I was thinking of saying is asking a question, which doesn't sound like a very good response to that.
That happens all the time. That's okay.
But with the assembled group, those of us who are here, I've got a clean sheet of paper in front of me, and give me a few bullet points of things that Environmental Action Committee has accomplished in your memory. Some of you maybe don't have a very long memory of the committee, but what do we remember that we've actually accomplished, done?
Well, the city certified National Wildlife Federation thing that Terry helped drive right before I got here.
Right. I was a part of that.
I have a list of your 2012 accomplishments that's two-thirds of a page long.
I'm actually more interested in what the folks at the table remember, because maybe that'll be more of a sense of where we think we would want to go.
Well, I know that we've reviewed quite a few rezonings, and we've given some quite a bit of time to those, hours and hours.
How would we vote on a A through F rating on our success? How are we heard and acknowledged in those? That was a major thing we've returned to many times. Has our voice been heard? People said, "Oh yeah, they've got some points to make here."
They have been, actually, and several city council members mentioned that. It's in the public record.
Yep.
Forever, as long as Fayetteville's in existence. And after we receive enough responses to the questions that were sent out, we'll come back to that discussion of how to promote the Enduring Green Network through ordinances and things like that. So I think that that's something that I don't know if I would call it an accomplishment or an initiative that we've started and haven't finished yet, but that's a big project. But as far as being heard by the city council, I think that having rezonings forwarded here and getting that started was a statement.
When I think about the habitat, I complied. I'm kind of under the radar because I have a whole lot of species that aren't acceptable. And but I do have a lot of habitat. And for instance, I collected water all summer from my air conditioning unit that's in my attic. And so I had water available all summer long for free. And had a lot of birds and dogs and everybody in between came and drank there. We've done that, and it looks like the city has picked up the banner. Looks like you've got a publication in hand that's about, establishing a habitat in your own property. Maybe that's a success that doesn't need to be remanufactured on the back end. Just a point to think about, because his presentation was lucid and complete. There was a lot there, and a lot of work has been done. Surely broadened my thoughts about where, for instance, I drive down the highway and I think about how great those rumble strips are. Now you're thinking, what's the big deal about rumble strips? The little things that make noise when you drive off? Well, every one of those puppies tonight is full of water. And every bird in the county goes and finds that. So anything like that broadens our thinking and helps us understand our impact. Like the gentleman from Sam's in Walmart, both of his local Sam's, two of the local Sam's I can think of, one in Bentonville and one in this town, are in these prairie settings. There's lots of opportunity there for an initiative that could take place there. The rezonings, it's an area of success. Aubrey, you're the graybeard. What other successes have we had as a committee?
Well, there were we had some even off-site meetings, which were useful because we invited more people in from the public. I'm afraid the number of people who actually watch government channels now to see what we discuss here is a lot lower than it was 10, 15 years ago when there were just a few channels in town.
Morphed over into social media?
Yeah, but that's why I will have a DVD of this in a few days, and it'll be on my YouTube. I do that all the time. Then I'll put a link to it on one or more Facebook sites, trying to get more people to see these things. But we were able to do that and have in people with some snacks and things off-site, and it was covered still by them. But it takes, staff's pretty tight, so getting somebody to go with us for a noon meeting or something like we did a few times back. Well, actually, before I was on it, I went to some of those. I attended this several years before I ever been asked to be on it. There were great things that happened way back there before any of us was on this, who's on it right now. But I don't know. I don't know that we're not gonna. What are we gonna do if we spend more time just listing, trying to think these up? Maybe bring your list next time. Bring everybody.
We've talked a lot about solid waste.
Yeah, I think
We've got solid waste players on the committee.
And we've been supportive of this big solid waste recycling master plan, and we've been involved in that, and I think been real supportive. I think that's a success. We went, members of the EAC went to the city council meeting when they had the proposal to do the pilot, single stream pilot and the compost pilot, so we've been supportive of that and active in that. Put those down as successes if you're looking for things.
I was just mostly wanting to do it to get us started in our thinking about what we would like to accomplish. Well, we did pretty well with this. We're good at doing this sort of thing. Where would we go?
Well, we haven't completed any of these things quite. That's the ongoing things and the things that come up with rezonings. I mean, we can't plan a year's work for a committee that deals with so many diverse things.
And I'm not suggesting that we plan to complete things. I'm just wanting to set some goals for our committee. And I think that's what Peter was alluding to, that the national or other cities have done.
If the dialogue if the conversation has moved from government channel to social media, that's a two-way street. And maybe we can develop to the point where we're hearing from people through that medium.
Okay. Maybe we can incorporate that into the survey somehow, a method of communicating our goals to the public.
There was some talk a year or two back about establishing a neighborhood map for the city where neighborhoods were delineated and agreed upon. And then based on that, then there could be, the activities that are neighborhood based.
Fayetteville Council of Neighborhoods that was presented there, I remember that.
Yeah, and then that committee was dissolved, but there was an initiative going on at the end of that where there was seemed to be a mandate to get these neighborhoods described and mapped. And so, to me, that fits in with the idea of a social media environment. And then those groups have particular voices of interest based on their interaction as a neighborhood. So maybe part of where we could develop would be as a gathering committee. Here's what we are hearing people say that they want to do about the environment.
Okay. Right. Anybody else have any?
I would say,
Andrew?
at the focus, I think, of your question should be more directed of what action items we can actually go forward with.
Absolutely.
Since we are the Environmental Action Committee, and I feel like much of the first year Kyle and I have been on here has been directed at, like you say, ordinance, not even reviews, but rezoning issues that we have mostly been, I think, squabbling talks.
And we don't have a lot of authority on those, so.
Correct.
Exactly. It is an arena of action, because if we influence the people who have the power to act.
Correct.
That's action.
But I'm saying more as in taking a lead instead of the back seat in that, and taking the first initiative on projects that even we want to have, or as you say, the community gathering information from our friends and neighbors, and then taking that in a forward action manner. I don't think every month we need to come with a new thing, because that can overwhelm us, since we do just meet once a month. But if we can actually come up with ideas we can project out and plan for 3, 6, 9 months in advance and work towards monthly.
One of the things we saw sitting in the last city council meeting was some of these zoning issues come up, or its variances on environmental regulations that the city has. They pose problems for developers. They're not flexible. They have mitigation solutions that aren't allowed in the city code that might be fully appropriate, but no one has the flexibility to allow that. I would like to see us look at.
They spent an hour. You guys spent an hour in that crazy argument last meeting.
Which one?
Oh,
Well,
the one with the new Volkswagen dealership.
Yeah.
And then Matt Petty came up, he was sitting there the whole time just biting his lip, just doing math. But that solution could have been thought up here if, that was presented here, a month or 2 months out. It's like, that we can come up and help ease those problems.
As long as as we're looking at things before they get to a point of the city council reviewing an action of the planning commission, because by then there's another commission out there that does zoning issues.
Right.
That's not our job. But if we could look at the way that city policies and code interact with environmental concerns in different parts of the city, and maybe offer some suggestions on the front end for how those could be handled differently to ease that process for everyone involved. I think that's a place where we could have a positive impact, and and still meet more of the environmental goals without people throwing up their hands and saying it's not worth it.
You know, I completely agree. And, you know, that was when we had that topic about ordinances that this committee could review, you know, and I think we got 2 responses on that, I think. That was kind of the goal, is looking at some of the ordinances that the city could, or this committee could review, and, you know, if we get more input on that, that's another survey that Peter and I were going to work together to send out, and it could include things like looking at things that planning looks at as well to come up with some of those solutions. So, you know, I encourage everyone to send some feedback on that too for this survey, and maybe we can just get it all done at once and have one survey instead of 2.
Like in the end, we just need to be more proactive than reactive.
Yeah.
Well, on the rezoning, were you at the planning commission meeting?
Not planning commission, just.
Were you? Who else?
I was just at the, I read about the planning
Were
commission.
you at the
but-
planning commission last? Okay, I spoke on 3 issues, and I don't announce I'm from any particular committee making these, because I did it before I was on these committees. But all 3 of them were environmental things, including the, you know, where the dealership wants to go in and all that. And so, you know, if we could make a difference in how they do it, so they protect more trees and set aside some natural soil for some native plants around the edge, then that's something that we should be involved in trying to do, even though we don't get to set the zoning, and it's not set until the council agrees to it, most cases. Some of them are.
Yeah, I don't think it's our place to go second guessing zoning decisions that have already been made, but if we can influence those policies beforehand so that
Right.
they're making more environmentally conscious zoning.
And so
decisions
that's the importance of, you know, what I learned years ago was you go to the park board every week and you find out what's going on in your neighborhood or about to happen or in your city. Because they get to see the plan that somebody's bringing, or the rezoning, or both. And at those meetings, they decide whether they will accept the part of the land or parkland set aside. Well, traditionally, and the alternative is the developer gives money. Sometimes the developer recognizes that, no, this is too swampy, I'm not going to build down here, so I'll try to give this to the city. Well, historically, there were times when the park board would not accept wetland because they couldn't make a ball field there, you know. But the park department is responsible for a good bit of landscaping and trying to keep the city, you know, green. And so it's always been an effort to say, well, try to save more. In Lionel's first speech in office 7 years ago, nearly now, he said that we would be setting aside 1/3 of every city park for natural species. Any of you listen to that speech?
It's almost 8 years.
Well, it'll soon be 8 years. But anyway, he, I have that on my YouTube if you can. You can go back to that speech.
I watch your YouTube frequently.
So, yeah, but it seems like a waste of time putting them up, but then I find things several years old and it's got a bunch of hits by the
Good
end.
history.
Yeah, it's good history to have. But there are reasons to try to educate in each of these venues, as they're called now. They used to be called places and committees and spots, but we're always in venues now. They play football in venues now. So, yeah, I think, you know, whatever we see that we can improve the environmental future by suggesting should be done. You should take that as part of your responsibility. And each of us would see different things in a situation that we might want to comment on publicly and share. And some of them get done, and some will get partially done. And if it's only partially done, it's still not totally ignored. So at the risk of getting ignored anymore, I'm going to suggest that we.
Okay. All right.
You know what?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate all that input, and I'll work with Peter. We'll get something going pretty quickly. Also be thinking, so, and just to recap one thing so everybody, no one forgets it, we're going to be thinking about a community liaison to the natural wildlife habitat for your yards. I'm not sure what the national organization's called off the top of my head.
National Wildlife Federation.
Federation or foundation?
Before the next meeting. And then in January, remember, for this committee, we'll have an election of our chair and vice chair again. I like to rotate those on the boards that I'm on. I don't like to just be the chair for two years in a row, because I think people have a different way of doing things, so brings new perspective. So we'll
Sounds
do
like
that.
Mike's getting a promotion.
Or Andrew is.
Yeah, so we'll have a election in January for both positions, and then so those are just two things to keep on your mind. I'm sure Mike still want to fill that role.
Oh, I'm fine.
I'll probably let someone else from the committee fill the role of chair, and I'll help in any way I can. But just want to get that on your radar. So this January will be here before we know it. We've got 2 months and 2 holidays in the meantime, and time will pass very quickly. So, all right. Do we have any quick announcements before we adjourn? All right. We will see you all in December.
Next meeting is Monday, December 21st.
December 21st.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We're adjourned.
Some turkey.
To all